Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner, and I'm going to be taking a look at a brand new game, Factorio. And joining me for this series is Rotype.
Hello, everyone.
And this is going to be somewhat of a tutorial series because I'm very new to Factorio, and it's a pretty complex game, and Rotype has quite a bit of experience with the game, so he's going to be taking me through the game, kind of explaining things, and I'm going to hand it over to him and just kind of have him explain what Factorio is.
Thanks. So, Factorio, the simplest way to put it is probably that it's a game about automation. The end goal is to produce this very complicated product that requires all of these inputs from different things combined in different ways. And of course, you can do a lot of this on your own, or you can have machines do it. So what you end up doing in this game is building these complex assembly line type structures, factories really, to produce this end product. And as a result, it becomes a game, like I said, about automation and a little bit about kind of logistics and space planning, stuff like that. So it's really enjoyable. As Mouse said, I have a ton of experience. For those of you watching on my channel, you can see some of my other series on this, and it's a game you can easily get lost in. So I'm glad to get involved and try to convert someone else to the wonders of this game.
All right, to just explain really quickly what it is that I'm doing. Right now, we're at the very early stages of the game. So when I hit the E key, it pops open my inventory, and I have a number of different categories I can choose from: logistics, production, intermediate products, and combat. So I started off with production, and I built myself an iron axe, and I'm assuming that Rotype did something similar. So all I have to do to build it is I just click on it here, and it shows you what I need to build it and how long it would take to build. In my pocket is how they refer to it. And I already started with some resources, so I was able to build that pretty easily. Also, I start on my inventory bar with a couple items as well. So we're just going around and collecting some resources that we're going to need to start off with. And if we take a look at the map, which I'll open up right now, we can see some of the resources. So these little blobs of color are resources. So the orangish one is copper, the black one is coal, and then we also have iron and stone. I'm not actually sure where the stone is. I didn't. Oh,
It's
I'm
right
standing
under me. It
yeah.
kind of blends in.
And then the iron is right here on my screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the two things that are in my bar right now. I've got a mining drill and a furnace. I'm just going to plop those down, and I can rotate it where I want to. And then I'm going to also plop down the furnace. And what that's going to do is it's going to feed whatever the miner drills is going to be fed right into the furnace. But I need fuel right now. This icon that's flashing red is letting me know that I don't have any fuel. And the reason why we were cutting down those trees is because trees are fuel. So,
I've basically done the same up here on stone. You find one of the resources you need the most in the early game is stone to make these furnaces, and then iron, which is why we've pretty much gone ahead and done the stone and iron already. And as I said, we're pretty much just using trees for now, but as you can imagine, there are better ways to fuel things. So you can see, oh, we don't actually have it in our inventories page now, but trees have a certain amount of fuel value, and they don't actually, it's not actually listed anywhere, but once you start finding some of the other fuels, you can see some of the other fuel values. And the first thing that is better than trees is actually coal in our patch up here. So one of our first priorities will be to mine the coal and get the coal down and used as fuel. Again, like I said earlier, in kind of an automated fashion, we can start getting these things put together so we don't have to do the manual chopping of trees, mining of coal or stone or any of these other items.
and I'm right now looking at the burner mining drill, and you can see the process. So it's burning the fuel, which is right now wood, and as it does so, it is pumping out the iron ore. And then if we look over in the furnace, we see, again, wood here being burned, and then we have the iron ore here. Not actually showing up, but it should be there. It's kind of just showing very briefly, and then it's producing iron plates. Now, earlier I was hovering over and I was just taking items As a matter of fact, Rotype just did. So you saw it said +6 iron plates. That's because he went over and used a long reach, which we do have a couple mods, which we will provide in the description of our videos. So you guys can set up everything the same way we do. But we don't have a ton of mods because I'm newer to the game and I don't want to get too carried away with mods at the moment. But I can just use holding in the control key and I can left click and that will take all of the iron plates out of the furnace. So you can do that with pretty much anything. And because we have long reach, I could do that as pretty much as far as I can see. So if I want some stone, all I have to do is come over to this wood chest, which I have currently highlighted, and I just control left click and it picks up all the stone that's in that crate right now.
Yeah, I suppose I'll go through some of the basic mods. Obviously, we will talk about the rest of them that show up later, but I'll go through kind of the basic ones. The first one being long reach, which you saw as Mouse just explained, you can basically interact with anything you can see. So if you have a big monitor, you have a large resolution, you can zoom out really far, you can interact with almost everything. Like the way I am looking right now, you can see anything in this space I can interact with. A couple things you can't do that you actually have to be near to actually mine something. You see, I can't mine this stone right now, even though I'm right clicking on it. Can't cut down trees. But most other things, like Mouse said, I can pick up some iron plate from way over there. I could pick up the stone. So that's super useful. Another thing you'll notice is that the light, especially if we stand next to each other, you can see that it's kind of dark, but way far out. This game does have a bit of a night cycle, but for YouTube, that doesn't really come out very well. So most YouTubers will involve some kind of light mod, which of course we have here. It usually lends me to forget to actually place the light that you can build around the base. I'll try to remember to do that, but that's another one we have. And we'll talk about the rest as they come up, but those are probably the two biggest you'll notice right away.
All right, and those of you watching my side of things, I actually accidentally put down a furnace for coal. And one interesting trick you can do with coal with the drills, as a matter of fact, Rotype just set one up and he set up another one, is you can aim them at each other and they'll feed into each other. So one of the drills will feed into the other one, and that is how you kind of get them continuously going. They'll fuel each other, but they'll also give you some coal as well.
And the nice thing about this is, again, with the clicking method, I'll call it, of retrieving materials, instead of opening this GUI with a left click, I can just control left or right click and pick it up. And if you have a nice circle like this, you just can grab them and they'll go ahead and continue to refuel themselves. And I actually, usually when I run 4, I turn them into this just to make sure they're all feeding into each other. If one runs out, then there'll be another one right along behind to fill it up.
And just to explain, the arrow is where the output is going to be. So as I'm hovering over this, you see a little yellow arrow. So this is the output going into this one, output going into this one, output going to this one, and then it goes in a circle, more or less. And then again, just control left click, and I can take coal out of any of these. So now I have a ready source of fuel that I don't have to chop down trees to utilize. And I'm going to go ahead and put that down in my bar so that I can easily access it. And I can just, like I took items, I can use the far reach to also refuel. Let's do an example of that right now. So I'm going to go over to the copper. If I remove this wood, it's not going to have any more fuel. So what I can do is just grab this and then control. You can either do left click or right click. Left click is going to dump out everything. Right click is going to put in half of what you're currently holding. So there we go. It split that in half, and then it's going to keep going. You can't mix two different fuel types, which is the reason why I took the wood out. And again, we see down here, this, okay, he already did it. So he just put in 8 coal. Same thing. He was all the way over there. All he had to do is pick it up and control, right click, put some coal inside.
It does lead to some interesting situations in multiplayer because you're used to people having to stand next to what they're doing. And sometimes in this game, somebody will be, like you said, halfway across the map and something will happen.
Okay, so more or less we've got a little bit of production going. What do you think is the next step, or what is the next step you recommend people to go for?
Yeah, so usually the next thing is to make electricity. All of these things, you'll notice these are called burner mining drills, and then we have these stone furnaces. Most of the rest of the items in this game all run off of electricity, and you can see here on my screen, I'm looking at this small electric pole to transfer it, and then an inserter here is an example of something that requires electricity to run. There's a burner version right here, and then a regular version. So usually your first step in this game is generally to get electricity. And the way you do that is first by building one of these offshore pumps, which I'm doing in my pocket, as they say right now. You'll notice on the bottom left here, that's where it's produced. And I'm just going to pick there for now. It may or may not stay, but we'll go up here. You put in an offshore pump that pulls in the water. The next thing you need are these boilers. And I'm going to go ahead and make 14 of those. I'll talk more about why I'm making 14 in a moment. The boilers will heat up the water, and then you send the water into these steam engines, which will produce electricity. So that's generally the first step you really do once you get kind of your basics done, like we've done here.
And I am currently building the steam engines in my pocket as he's doing that.
I might as well talk about the ratio at this point. So you saw I built 14 of these boilers, and Mouse is hopefully building 10 steam engines, or eventually we will have 10 steam engines. And that's kind of an accepted ratio based on how the boilers work to heat up the water. So if you put 14 boilers down and then connect 10 steam engines following the boilers, you will perfectly power all of the steam engines with hot water heated to the appropriate level, and then all 10 of your engines will run at 100% efficiency. All of these numbers can be kind of mathed out. You can see here in the boiler page, it'll talk about efficiency, and it'll talk about here, if you hover over the boiler itself on the right side, you can see temperature of the water, how much water there's there, all that stuff. So as we go through this series, we're going to probably start talking about a lot of different ratios for many, many different things. One of the more simple things you can think about is an example of this electronic circuit requires one iron plate and 3 copper cable. And so you produce these copper cables over here. And as you can see, different products take different amounts of time to produce. And so you can kind of ratio them out and decide how many machines you need or how much of one product you need to go into the production of another product. And this will make a whole lot more sense once we start building some of these. But the first of these kind of golden ratios we're talking about is this 14 boilers to 10 steam engines kind of number.
How many steam engines did I build for you so far? I actually lost count.
We have 6 right now.
All right. So right now, the bottleneck is our steel production, or iron production, more appropriately. And just trying
a bit lackadaisical about our iron production so far.
Okay, so I have 2 more. I have 1 produced and another one producing. So over in the lower left corner, whenever I'm making anything in my pocket, you can see the process as it goes. And it has to build each component that is part of the item in turn. So depending on how complex the item is, you can have quite a bit of a wait before the thing finishes in your pocket, which is the whole automation aspect of this game. Because building everything in your pocket kind of gets ludicrous at a certain point.
Yes, I suppose there is a limit at some point. We say you could build everything in your pocket. There are a few items that you can't build in your pocket. It doesn't let you. Most of the things, eventually we will start using oil, which is what these patches over here on the ground are. And once we start using oil, there are a couple things that have to be made in a building called a chemical plant. And so you can't actually quite get all the way to building the rocket, which is the end game item, all in your pocket. But there's a great number of things that you could, if you really wanted to, build in your pocket. But it would get very tedious very quickly.
There's only 1 more steam engine required. Are you building that one, or?
I'm actually building an electric miner because I want to get the fueling of our electricity done automatically or more efficiently.
Okay, well, we're almost to that point where we're producing electricity. And I do need to put a little bit more fuel down here. There we go. All right, I should have the last one. So again, as you could see there, it started off building gears and it did pipes, and then finally it could build the steam engine itself. And that's kind of the process that you go through whenever you're building anything. All right, so now we have all of the steam engines and we have all of the boilers, but we're not producing electricity for two different reasons. First off, we aren't fueling the boilers, so they're not producing steam or heating up the water to produce the steam. And the steam engines are also have another indicator. So we've seen the out of fuel indicator. This other indicator means that power is not connected. So the little yellow plug means you have to connect power. And to do that, we need the power poles, which we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. And I'm just going to build a whole bunch of these. That's why I was cutting down trees, because you need quite a bit of wood to produce these. Well, you need some wood to produce these.
And that's precisely what I'm up to now. I ended up using all of my wood on fueling random things, and you always get to that point where you need to make power poles and have no wood.
So as you saw there, it went through each of the components over in the left, one at a time, but for the entire stack of 29 that I just built. Because I did a full 29, it actually taken quite a long time for it to start producing the poles themselves. If I'd only done 5, I probably would have already had those 5 produced by now. But it's just not until, when of course I say 29, it's actually, each one is actually several, but all right. So now I've got more power poles than I'll ever want. And I can just, how do you normally build the power poles? You just do the click and drag and let them pull themselves out, or do you do each pole individually?
Yeah, I usually click and drag. So I suppose that's worth mentioning is if you, actually, even more convenient way than what you just did is I'll show you. If you run while holding the mouse, so you're not moving the mouse at all, you just run along, it ends up being a lot easier to draw a straight line. Sometimes, especially with things like conveyor belt, you'll end up trying to drag along a straight line. And I don't know about you, but I am incapable, apparently, of running my mouse in a perfectly horizontal or vertical direction. So often you'll see people like I just did there with that transport belt, place one and then just run in the direction, because with the digital input of the keypad, you can run in a perfectly straight horizontal or vertical direction. And that
Now,
helps a lot with laying things like poles, transport belt, anything else you're trying to lay a whole bunch of.
and the important aspect with these poles is that they have to be so close to each that you can't get them, once you get far enough away, as you can see here, as I'm trying to place this one, the connection gets broken. So if you just click and drag, it's going to space them out to their optimum distance, like so, and then you go from there. So this is the initial connection, but then we're going to want to draw that connection over to our other items that need power. So that's what he's doing right now. He's bringing that power up. And now you see the yellow plug icon has gone away, but we have a new icon, little red power icon. That means we're not producing any power. That's because our boilers aren't up and running. But all we're going to need to do that is just get some coal in them, and you've already done a little bit of coal there. So why don't I stop waving around power poles and start putting in coal?
Yeah, and this is helpful because now, as you can imagine, this will be automated, except for the fact we don't actually have any inserters yet. But as the coal here marches along this transport belt, it will be presented to these boilers. And if we build a mechanism to put the coal into the boilers, then this whole power generation process is kind of taken care of. We don't have to worry about it until we run out of coal. But until that happens, we don't have to worry about it, which is nice.
I'm going to bring up a point that I've seen argued about a little bit with Factorio. Whether or not you should use a burner inserter ever. Some people make an argument that burner inserters, for instance, feeding into this boiler is actually not a bad thing because, and is that what you already did? You did burner inserters? Yeah, because what I was saying is the coal is what you need the coal to fuel the burner inserter. So in this instance, if for whatever reason our power went down, as long as we had a coal supply, burner inserters would keep going.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion that some people have. I'm not sure that there's a complete right or wrong answer. I do like it because I don't know, I don't have to put poles down here, so maybe you save on a couple poles. Technically, I believe the burner inserters exhibit or produce a little bit less pollution. It's hard to tell looking at, yeah, so, no, maybe not. I'm looking at the two inserters in my crafting menu, and it looks like the burner inserter consumes 188 kilowatts and the regular only 13. So I believe we haven't actually talked about pollution yet, but I believe the pollution is a function of how much power you're using. So maybe my whole theory was you produce less pollution by using burner inserters, but maybe that's just all wrong.
Well, I think the argument I heard had something to do with the fact that the burner inserters will keep running regardless of what your power situation is. But
I mean, that definitely is a useful thing. Like you can imagine if for some reason, say you ran out of coal on this line, and so you can imagine your electricity will shut down, but your electricity is what puts coal on the line. So you can kind of get in this death spiral type loop of not enough electricity to mine the coal, which is what helps you produce electricity. If you have burner miners, you don't necessarily need to solve the electricity problem. You just need to dump more fuel onto the line. So it's a little bit of a way to shortcut that problem. You can imagine having like a buffer of any kind of fuel, really, because that's all they need. They're just some kind of fuel source where if the electricity gets too low or if there's not enough coal on this line, you start emptying your buffer onto that line and you don't have to worry about your electricity fueling the inserters to fuel your electricity problem.
all right, well, now that we have our electricity up and running, I think this is a good point to go ahead and put a cut in this video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is Mouse Gunner and Rotype signing out.